Zainab Okafor was 26, full of life and driven by a mix of ambition and kindness. Living in Lagos, she had built her life carefully, working as a marketing manager at a growing tech startup, paying her bills on time, and enjoying the small freedoms that came with financial independence. Her mornings were busy, filled with meetings, emails, and endless strategies to help her company grow. Yet, despite her hectic schedule, there was one routine she never skipped. Near her office in Ikeja, under the shade of a tall mango tree, sat Baba Tund, a homeless man whose weathered face and gentle eyes had caught her attention years ago. Every week, Zainab would stop by, carrying a small bag of food or a few naira tucked in her pocket. Sometimes it was bread and eggs, other times a warm meal from a nearby street vendor. She never asked him for anything in return, and he never asked. There was an unspoken understanding between them. Her coworkers often teased her, calling it a waste of money, or joking that she was buying a friend. Zainab would smile politely, shrug it off, and continue on her way. To her, it wasn't about charity or impressing anyone. It was simply about seeing someone in need and doing what she could. Week after week, she watched him smile faintly, nod in gratitude, and sometimes tell short, half-formed stories about his life. Little did she know, these small acts of kindness were quietly shaping a bond that would change both their lives in ways she could never imagine. Zainab had been helping Baba Tund for years, and over time, something deeper grew between them. A quiet, unspoken bond that neither of them fully understood. It wasn't loud or obvious. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic moments. Just a few minutes each week when she would hand him a warm meal or some extra naira, and he would look at her with a mix of gratitude and something softer, almost like recognition. She felt a strange sense of protectiveness toward him, as if she wanted to shield him from the harshness of the streets, from the cold stares of passers-by, and even from the indifference of the world. Baba Tund, in return, began to share little pieces of his life, but always vaguely. He spoke of hard times and lost opportunities, never revealing too much, but enough to make Zainab's heart ache and her curiosity grow. Sometimes, when he talked about the Lagos of his youth, she could see a spark of pride mixed with pain in his eyes. She listened quietly, never prying, letting him tell his story in fragments, like a puzzle she longed to complete. Her coworkers noticed the routine and couldn't resist teasing her. "Why do you give him money every week?" one would ask, laughing. Another would roll their eyes. "Does he even know you?" They meant no real harm, but their questions stung in a small way. Zainab always smiled and shrugged, never offering an explanation. To her, it wasn't about impressing anyone or proving anything. It was her personal mission, her way of making a small difference in a world that often felt unfair. Over time, the bond deepened silently. She started noticing the little things. The way he straightened his tattered shirt when she arrived, the faint smile he gave when he saw her, the way his hands shook less when he accepted her help. For Zainab, these small moments became the highlight of her week. No one else saw it, no one else understood it, but that quiet connection gave her a sense of purpose she couldn't find anywhere else. And little did she know, this fragile, quiet bond was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. Zainab often thought about her father, though she had almost no memories of him. Emeka Okafor had been a successful businessman in Lagos, a man who everyone admired for his wealth and charm. But when Zainab was just 5 years old, he disappeared. One day he was there, smiling at her breakfast table, and the next he was gone, vanished without a word, leaving her mother Ife Okafor to raise her alone. Her mother never spoke about him. Whenever Zainab asked, her questions were met with silence or a gentle change of subject. "He's not important right now," her mother would say, her eyes hiding a sadness that Zainab could feel but never understand. Growing up, Zainab believed her father had abandoned them, that he didn't care enough to stay to protect or to love his little girl. That belief left a hollow ache inside her, one that never really went away. But instead of making her bitter, that pain shaped her in quiet, powerful ways. She became sensitive to the struggles of others, noticing when someone was overlooked, ignored, or hurting. That was part of why she couldn't walk past Baba Tund without helping him. In her heart, every person struggling with life's harshness reminded her of the emptiness she felt as a child, the longing for a parent who never returned. School and friends could never fill that void. Zainab learned to be independent early, to rely on her own strength, and to hide her sadness behind determination and smiles. She excelled in her studies, focused on her career, and built a life that her mother could be proud of. But no matter how successful she became, a part of her always wondered about Emeka. What had really happened to him, why he left, and if he ever thought about her? Those unanswered questions lived quietly in her mind, shaping her choices, her compassion, and her desire to do good without expecting anything in return. Little did she know, the shadow of her father's disappearance was closer than she imagined, quietly waiting to resurface in a way that would change everything she thought she knew about her past. One rainy afternoon, Zainab noticed something was wrong with Baba Tund. He looked weaker than usual, his skin pale and his hands trembling. He had been coughing for days, but today it seemed worse. Without a second thought, Zainab helped him up and hailed a cab to take him to the nearest hospital. Her heart pounded the entire way. She had always cared for him, but seeing him like this made fear and worry surge through her. At the hospital, a nurse quickly led them to the emergency ward, while a social worker came over to ask routine questions. "Do you have any form of identification? A card, a driver's license, anything?" the woman asked gently. Baba Tund shook his head slowly. "No, nothing," he murmured. He seemed confused, almost frightened by the question. Then, as if searching for comfort, he opened the small pocket of his tattered jacket and pulled out a worn, old locket. It had scratches and dents, clearly years old, but it had been cared for in its own quiet way. Zainab took a closer look and froze. The locket felt familiar. Not just any locket. The design, the tiny engraved pattern on the front. She had seen it before. As a little girl, she remembered it hanging from a chain around her father's neck in old family photographs. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the locket, trying to steady her racing thoughts. Could it really be the same? Could this homeless man, the one she had quietly been helping for years, somehow be connected to her father? The possibility seemed impossible, yet every detail of the locket, the shape, the faded engraving, was etched in her memory. Zainab's mind spun. She wanted to ask him to understand, but she also didn't want to scare him. All she could do was stay by his side, watching as the doctors attended to him, her heart filled with a mix of dread, hope, and a strange sense of destiny. Something about this day felt different, like a hidden truth was waiting just around the corner, ready to change everything she thought she knew about the past, and perhaps about Baba Tund himself. After that day at the hospital, Zainab couldn't stop thinking about the locket. Something deep inside her stirred, a mixture of curiosity, hope, and a creeping fear of what she might discover. That night, she pulled out old photo albums from her parents' shelves, flipping through yellowed pages and faded pictures. Then she remembered Baba Tund's face, the way he had smiled faintly, the tired eyes that somehow felt familiar. Her hands shook as she began comparing the photos to his features, trying not to let her imagination run wild. It started with the eyes. The same deep brown, the same gentle curve that always seemed to hold both warmth and sadness. Then she noticed something else. A small, thin scar on his hand, almost hidden but unmistakable. Her pulse quickened. That scar matched one on a tiny hand in one of her childhood photos. Her father's hand. Her heart raced, doubts and hope colliding in a whirlwind. Could Baba Tund really be her father? The thought seemed impossible. Yet every small detail made her question everything she had ever believed. Determined to find answers, Zainab began a quiet investigation. She visited local archives, digging through old newspapers, property records, and business filings. Every piece of information she could find about Emeka Okafor, her father, she studied carefully. She spoke to old neighbors, people who remembered her father from when she was a child, trying to piece together fragments of the past. Some remembered a sudden disappearance, some recalled rumors of betrayal in business, and some had only vague memories. But slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Zainab also found old documents, letters, and receipts tucked away in dusty drawers. Each one was a small clue, a thread connecting her childhood memories to the present. The more she uncovered, the more the possibility grew that Baba Tund was indeed Emeka Okafor, the father she had mourned in her heart for over 20 years. Sitting alone in her small apartment that night, surrounded by photos and papers, Zainab felt a storm of emotions: fear, hope, confusion, and longing. She knew she had to confront him, to ask questions she had carried silently for decades. But a part of her also trembled at the thought of what she might hear. The quiet bond she had shared with Baba Tund now carried a weight she could not ignore. Something extraordinary was about to unfold, and Zainab could feel it in every beat of her heart. The next morning, Zainab returned to the hospital, her hands gripping the worn locket tightly. Her heart pounded so hard she thought he might hear it. Baba Tund was sitting quietly in the corner, wrapped in a thin blanket, looking smaller and more fragile than ever. She took a deep breath and walked over slowly, careful not to startle him. Baba Tund, she said gently, kneeling beside him. I found something I think you might know. She held out the locket, letting the light catch its scratched surface. His eyes widened instantly, a flicker of recognition, or was it fear, passing over his face. He stared at it for a long moment, his hands trembling slightly. Where did you get that? He asked, his voice low and shaky. Zainab swallowed, trying to steady herself. I found it among some old things from my childhood. It looks so familiar and I think it belonged to your family. Baba Tun's lips pressed together and for a second he didn't move. Then almost instinctively he tried to pull away, to shrink back into himself. His eyes darted to the door as if he was considering running. I don't understand, he whispered, his voice shaking with confusion. Why are you showing me this? Zainab reached out slowly, resting her hand lightly on his arm. I just need to know the truth, she said softly, her own voice trembling. Please. I have to ask. Could you be my father? For a moment Baba Tund froze completely. His eyes welled up, a mixture of shock, guilt and something else Zainab couldn't name. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, unsure of what to say. The silence stretched between them, heavy and almost unbearable. Finally he looked down at the locket in her hand, then at her eyes, and a tear slipped down his cheek. He hesitated, caught between speaking and fleeing, as if the truth was too much for him to bear. Zainab held her breath, hoping he would stay, hoping he would trust her enough to answer. In that quiet, tense moment, everything hung on a fragile line. The line between fear and revelation, between the past and the life they both had to face together. Baba Tund sat quietly for a long time, his eyes fixed on the floor, his hands shaking as he held the locket. The hospital room felt too silent, as if even the walls were waiting for him to speak. Zainab's heart was beating so fast she could barely breathe. She was afraid that if he stayed quiet any longer she might break down completely. Finally he took a deep breath and looked up at her. His eyes were full of tears. Zainab, he said softly. My real name is Emeka Okafor. I am your father. The words hit her like thunder. For a moment everything stopped. Her ears rang, her hands went numb, and her mind refused to believe what she had just heard. No, that's not possible, she whispered, shaking her head. My father left us. He abandoned us. Emeka closed his eyes, pain written all over his face. I never wanted to leave you, he said. I was a successful man once. I had businesses, money, respect. But my partner betrayed me. He stole everything. My accounts, my properties, my name. I tried to fight back but I lost. I became broke overnight. His voice broke as he continued. I was ashamed. I didn't want you and your mother to see me like that. I started sleeping on friends' couches, then on the streets. Life became harder every day. Slowly I lost everything, even myself. Zainab listened in shock, tears rolling down her cheeks. Why didn't you come back? She asked. He looked at her sadly. Your mother knew where I was. She helped me in secret. But she believed it was better for you to think I was gone than to see me broken and homeless. She wanted to protect you, and me. At that moment, Zainab felt a flood of emotions crash into her heart. She felt angry for the years of silence. She felt sad for the pain her father had carried alone. She felt hurt for the little girl who had grown up thinking she was unwanted. But she also felt relief, deep, powerful relief. Her father had not abandoned her. He had been lost. And now, after so many years, she had finally found him. Zainab couldn't hold it in anymore. The moment her father finished speaking, she stood up, her legs trembling, and pulled him into a tight embrace. Right there in the middle of the hospital corridor, surrounded by strangers, machines, and quiet footsteps, father and daughter held each other and cried like they had been waiting for this moment all their lives. Emeka's shoulders shook as he whispered, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you. Zainab buried her face in his chest and sobbed. I missed you every day. I thought you didn't love me. People passed by, some slowing down to watch, some wiping their own eyes. It felt like a scene from a movie, but it was real. Two broken hearts finally finding each other after more than 20 years. They stayed like that for a long time, holding on as if letting go might make everything disappear again. When they finally sat down, Zainab held his hands firmly and looked into his tired eyes. Daddy, she said softly, using the word for the first time in her adult life. I'm not leaving you again. We'll fix this together. I'll help you get better. I'll help you stand again. You're not alone anymore. Emeka cried openly, nodding again and again. You're my miracle, he whispered. God brought you back to me. Later that evening, Zainab went to see her mother. Her heart was heavy as she stood in front of Ife Okafor holding back tears. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked quietly. "All these years I thought he left us. I blamed him. I blamed myself." Her mother broke down instantly. "I was afraid," she cried. "Afraid you would be hurt. Afraid you would lose respect for him. I thought I was protecting you." They cried together, years of pain finally pouring out. It wasn't easy. The wounds were deep. But slowly, through honest talks, hugs, and forgiveness, they began to heal. That night, Zainab realized something powerful. Her family was broken but not beyond repair. And love, even after decades of silence, was still strong enough to bring them back together. After the emotional reunion, Zainab did not waste any time. She made a promise to her father and she was determined to keep it. Using her savings, her hard-earned money from years of working and sacrificing, she started rebuilding his life step by step. The first thing she did was make sure he received proper medical care. She arranged regular hospital visits, bought his medicines on time, and stayed by his side during every appointment. For the first time in years, Emeka felt truly cared for. Next, Zainab found him a small, clean apartment in a quiet part of Lagos. It wasn't big or fancy, but it was safe, warm, and filled with peace. When she handed him the keys, Emeka broke down in tears. "I never thought I would have a home again," he whispered. Zainab smiled through her own tears and said, "This is just the beginning, Daddy." She also used her business connections to help him regain confidence and purpose. Old friends, former colleagues, and kind-hearted partners offered support when they heard his story. Some helped him get small consulting work. Others guided him in managing his health and finances. Slowly, Emeka began to stand tall again. His eyes looked brighter. His voice sounded stronger. His spirit started to heal. One day, a local journalist heard about their story and decided to share it. Soon, news of the girl who found her homeless father spread across Lagos. It appeared on blogs, radio shows, and social media. People were deeply touched. Many couldn't believe how kindness had reunited a broken family. Inspired by Zainab's actions, people began helping the homeless in their own ways. Some donated food. Others volunteered at shelters. Business owners offered jobs. Students organized charity drives. What started as one girl's quiet kindness turned into a city-wide movement. Zainab watched it all with humility. He never wanted fame. She only wanted her father back. But now her pain had turned into purpose. Her tragedy had become hope, not just for her family, but for thousands of forgotten souls across Lagos. Months passed and life began to look different for both Zainab and her father. Emeka was no longer the weak, broken man sitting under a tree in Ikeja. He dressed neatly, walked with confidence, and spoke with pride again. He started waking up early, reading newspapers, and even mentoring young people who were struggling in business. Step by step, he regained his dignity. People who met him now would never believe he had once been homeless. Zainab also changed. The journey had made her stronger, wiser, and more patient. She no longer rushed through life without reflection. She understood pain, loss, and forgiveness in a deeper way. She became more grateful for every small blessing and more determined to use her success for good. Her heart, once filled with unanswered questions, was now filled with purpose. Inspired by everything they had been through, Zainab decided to do more. She founded the Okafor Foundation, a charity focused on helping homeless families across Lagos. The foundation provided food, temporary shelter, medical support, and job training. It also helped reconnect broken families just like hers had been healed. Volunteers joined, donors supported, and soon the foundation became a symbol of hope in many communities. Emeka often stood beside his daughter at events, his eyes full of pride. "You saved me," he once told her. Zainab shook her head and smiled. "No, Daddy. We saved each other." One evening, as she looked over the busy streets of Lagos from her apartment balcony, Zainab reflected on her journey. From giving food to a stranger, to finding her lost father, to changing countless lives. With quiet confidence, she whispered the words that defined her story. "I gave him help as a stranger, but I found my father, and in him I found my own strength."